Thank you.
Maria, 35, she logs off Zoom, and her team offline again. Not a single one stuck around, not even now, busiest time of the year. Maria is still processing her one-on-one with Priya, her new hire. Priya, 23, earlier today.
Can we set up weekly feedback sessions? Also, about that coach we discussed during onboarding, when can I start? And just curious, what would it take to get promoted by the end of the year?
Ambition or entitlement? Initiative or impatience? Bold or just disconnected? The lines have become a little blurry because Priya, they aren't the only one. This mindset seems to be everywhere these days. On the other side of the city, Amir, 61, senior HR manager. Mid-scroll, inbox full of resignation emails. Most quit within months. The reasons?
Got another opportunity. It's just not what I expected.
And one that hurt.
The culture here is too violent.
Amir sits there shaking his head. He doesn't get it. What are they talking about? And wasn't this fancy schmancy new work policy supposed to fix that? Lee, 47. Lee's team meetings, they used to be light, and now they feel heavy, tense, a little dramatic, misunderstanding, mistrust, more elephants in the room than emojis on Slack. Also Lynn, who's frustrated, no, not Lynn, Lee. Also Lee, who is frustrated, is thinking about making a move, about going somewhere else.
All this complaining all the time when the job is to innovate and sell.
And in the background, the fog of burnout, change fatigue, efficiency fatigue, and drama fatigue.
Hi, Republika. Danke. We're Lynn.
And Johannes.
As announced. We love being here, we love being back. When we're not sweating on stage trying to find our groove, we work with teams and organizations who try to activate all generations at work and struggle doing that. And we actually started thinking about this a while back because we noticed that our clients, we work with very different clients across sectors, and our clients kept telling us stories like the ones that we just told you. And we got very curious about that and found that underneath they are all stories of generational conflict, and they are patterns of a new normal. I think we all laugh at generational memes occasionally, but what's funny on TikTok becomes very toxic in the office very soon, because at work we can't stay comfy in our echo chambers, right? Work is where we clash.
We clash, one, because we're growing further and further apart, and two, because if we're honest, we lack the skills, the knowledge, and often also the attitude to really connect across generations. The thing is, if we don't squash the beef and bridge those distances, we're throwing a lot of money on the problem, 50 billion annually in Germany alone. And we leave a lot of value on the table. Think talent, competitive edge, and also joy. Conflict is a symptom, and when we start treating what's below the surface, we grow those muscles that organizations need. And when we ignore them, we risk our reputation, the image, our human capital, the people, and our impact, the products.
And these surface level stories that put entire generations into boxes, they don't really help. And I guess you've all heard them or you've read them. They go usually a little bit like this. Boomers value loyalty. Xers fight for autonomy. Millennials like us crave flexibility. And Gen Z looks for meaning. Of course, there's some truth in that. But there's a big but. Generations are internally diverse. No one fits neatly into a single generational box, right? My background, my socioeconomic status, how I've been culturally brought up, what's going on in my life right now, if I'm menopausal, if I'm raising kids, all of that shapes how I show up at work. And these labels that we also use, boomers, Xers, millennials, Gen Z, alpha, they reflect certain histories, right? And regional experiences. In Germany, we count maybe 6 generations since 1945. We might differentiate between 14 in the same time period in a country like Japan. And because research on generational differences is still so Western-centric, we lack the data to actually make assumptions about the global majority. So generational differences are patterns. They are not truth.
And they're also not new. We've had multi-generational workplaces as far back as we can remember. What is new is the type of conflict and disconnect. And from what we understand, there's 6 drivers that are here at play. Driver 1, technology. We're living in different realities. In the age of big data, researchers are able to draw on surveys that date back all the way to the 40s. And this massive amount of data suggests that societies change with the technologies people use. Sounds pretty intuitive, no? When technology changes, people change, and then culture changes. Now, tech is speeding up. How we communicate, how we live, learn, work, shop, date, die, is changing more quickly. So the common ground, the shared experience space between generations is getting smaller. For those who can, remember the 80s and 90s. Cultural reference points like music, TV, workplace tech, they changed more gradually. Families consumed similar media and colleagues used fairly similar tools. The early 2000s were a big rupture. Think smartphones, social media, the attention economy, mass surveillance, online violence, streaming, clickbaiting, and more. Younger generations, like Gen Z, were born and had their most formative years in the middle of this technological storm. So if accelerating tech means accelerating culture shift, then this isn't just about younger colleagues feeling disconnected from their older leaders. It also means younger colleagues feeling disconnected from each other. When Lynn and I interview Gen Zers, they usually crack jokes about how they are unable to understand people who are 5 years younger than them. So this isn't just a tech gap, it's an experience gap. We're not simply misunderstanding each other, we're starting to live in different realities.
Driver 2, demographics, or who shapes company culture. In many Western countries, like here in Germany or across the EU, birth rates have actually plummeted since the 60s. And that means that boomers retire. They're leaving behind twice as many jobs, roughly, open for younger generations to fill. And they take decades of experience and wisdom with them when they exit. And all that while skilled workers are in short supply right now. And I guess that's why, to the frustration of many people we talk to, younger workers in several sectors have in the last years experienced a labor market or a labor market dynamic that gave them more choice, more leverage. And some call that opportunity overwhelm. At the same time, boomer founders also need younger generations to take over the businesses they've built, right? In Germany, 1/3 of entrepreneurs are over 60 years old. 3 in 4 small or medium-sized companies can't find a successor right now. What does that mean? It means that very soon, like it or not, your culture at work will change. Imagine sitting in the office 10 years from now, 80% of your colleagues will be millennials, Gen Z, and alphas.
Driver number 3, individualism and delayed life stages. Since the 60s and 70s, we've seen a broad cultural shift, especially in Western societies, towards the I. A focus on personal choice, on self-expression, the belief that depending on others is bad, and that loving yourself and feeling good about oneself is important. Jean Twang has used Google Books data to track this in the US and finds a dramatic increase in phrases like, "you are special," and "just be yourself." How does that impact the way that we show up for each other at the workplace? Individualism is increasing because of a mix of factors. We have new middle classes, consumer culture, digital technologies, and neoliberal policies that emphasize personal responsibility over collective responsibility. As birth rates declined across many advancing economies, many families could invest more in fewer children. This has reshaped how we grow up. Many children today do fewer things independently, and many teenagers practice what we could call adult responsibilities a little later. So many young adults move out later, they partner later, they parent later. And in the West, researchers call this a slow life strategy. But here's the twist. Those traditional life steps, moving out, partnering, parenting, they're also how people learn how to solve problems, how to adapt, how to work with each other, how to fight, how to make up. So with delayed life experiences, more young adults enter the workplace with less practical experience in these areas.
And what else drives the beef? A super diversity for sure, or the end of easy labels. Germany is now the world's second largest immigration country in absolute numbers, right after the US. Only 10% of those in their 80s and 90s now have a so-called migration background, compared to 32% in their 40s and 50s, that's many in the room maybe, and 43% of children under 5. So migration experience is becoming the norm. Cultural backgrounds are more varied than ever, including within groups that we may see as one. We have more languages, more faith, more identities that intersect in one person. And younger generations embody this shift. Gen Z, for example, is the most diverse generation our workplaces have ever seen, and also the most likely to identify as queer, as neurodiverse, and as non-binary. Sociologists call this super diversity. And it means that our workplaces are confronted with very new expectations around inclusion. There's more attention to biases, to tokenism, more awareness of structural isms, and louder calls for accountability and justice. In education, we often say, meet your students where they're at, right? In organizations, the same applies now. It's about co-creating workplaces that recognize social complexity as the new normal.
Driver number 5, the promise of progress is broken, or loyalty no longer equals stability. For a part of the 20th century, a quiet promise shaped a lot of people's expectations. Work hard, stay loyal, progress will come, a stable job, a better life for your kids, maybe even a home. Now, let's be clear, that promise was always limited in who it reached. Now, with the Poli crisis, it's threatening this for all but the 1%. Disruptive markets, economic inequality, housing crisis, political instability, polarization and misinformation, existential climate emergency. Now, younger generations are coming of age in this very context. They face stagnant wages, precarious jobs, unaffordable housing, student debt, rights backlash, eroded trust in institutions, and mental health challenges. At the same time, older generations, many of whom spent decades adhering to the old rules, worry about their pensions. Will the deal still hold for me? Their care, who will be there for me? Rapid technological shifts, can I keep up? Relevance, will my experiences matter in a world I struggle to recognize? Ageism, including from algorithms, am I becoming invisible? Caregiving, how am I supposed to take care of my aging family members at a time where I struggle to make sense of my own future? For those long excluded from that progress promise, the current dynamics only continue and intensify the effects of an unjust system. So next time when you see a colleague of yours, a young colleague of yours, job hop or disengage, or an older one snapping back, it might be conflict in disguise. And it might also be a perfectly rational response to the instability we're facing. And it's a form of anticipatory grief for futures that no longer hold. Everyone, across all generations, reacts to loss, because we're humans. But we might not recognize it. Some fight, some leave, and some freeze.
Last driver, driver 6, emotions drive the workplace, or the social intelligence gap. If I listen to you, no wonder that our workplaces are hypercharged under the surface. Fear, will I become irrelevant? Frustration, I'm inheriting a broken system. Grief, from all sides as career paths, as roles, as norms disappear, become uncertain. Exhaustion. But despite the research we have on emotional intelligence, most organizations still prioritize cognitive and technical skills. IQ, not EQ. They measure productivity, not psychological safety. They optimize workflows, not relationships. If workplaces don't engage with the emotions that drive them, the result becomes pretty predictable. More conflict, more burnout, less trust, more turnover. So there is a social intelligence gap, a mismatch between the emotional complexity of the modern workplace and the emotional capacity of our systems to hold that. That was a lot. Let's recap for a second. We've got accelerating tech, shifting demographics, individualism on the rise, life stages slowed down, the most diverse workforce ever, constant crises, and a broken progress promise, and unaddressed emotions everywhere. If we want organizations to become future fit, we should probably address this, right? But how do you do that? That's still pretty uncharted territory, and we're very sorry to disappoint. We didn't bring the magic powder, but we'll bring 3 invitations for intervention at 3 different levels: story, design, and action.
Let's start with the story. Humans need meaning, and stories are our meaning-making technology. Think for a moment. What's the subconscious story that you tell yourself and others about generations at work? Many of our clients are brilliant at storytelling, vision decks, value statements, mission workshops, but their stories usually have one big limitation. Almost always, they're not reflective of more than 2 generations. Most people's and most companies' narratives still don't speak directly to the multi-generational reality that we're in. They rarely explore the possibilities or the potential of it. And that's because our default stories tend to start from the perspective of now, current habits and outdated assumptions, and not on longer-term potential of understanding generational diversity as something cool, as an asset. So what if we flipped the script?
You are going to die. So is every organization, every team, every department. And that sounds harsh, I know, but as a death doula, let me tell you that thinking from the end can be pretty clarifying. Because when people die, or when people approach their end, things move into focus. Was my life meaningful? Did I invest enough time and energy into people around me? What will remain when I'm gone? Now apply this to work. No matter whether you lead a team, an organization, whether you work with colleagues, doesn't matter. Ask yourself, if this ended tomorrow, what would each generation want to remember about how we work together at a time when things are really difficult and it matters how we treat each other? What would they want to remember? Am I working towards something that younger generations are proud to inherit and older ones are proud to kind of pass on and hand over? What generational potential would we regret having wasted? If we zoom out a little, wouldn't we be like, damn, we could have done this differently? Done this smarter? Your organization is only so alive as the degree to which all generations are invested in it. And you know, we say, or they say, it takes a village to raise a child. We would say, or we know, it takes a village to support someone through the end of their life. And just like that, it takes a village to sustain a company through growth, crisis, and legacy. The more intergenerational that village is, the better it will respond to change, to product development needs, and to customer needs in a very predictable world.
Stories only matter if people can actually live them, and often that doesn't happen by accident, it takes design. What we're seeing is that most organizations aren't proactively designing for a multi-generational future. At best, they're reacting. Think about your organization's processes, departments, and teams. Chances are you'll notice the same. Do you pay in purpose or just perks? And what are the perks? A company car, retirement benefits, or a life coach? Who needs what, and who decides? And is your pay transparent enough for everyone to be able to trust it? Are your promotion policies built around productivity and impact? Or one generation's comfort with control, tradition, and ideas of seniority? Are your working hour policies grounded in evidence about productivity or in assumptions? We could and should examine every aspect of our organization from a multi-generational angle. Now, let's zoom into some. Onboarding. Onboarding isn't admin, it's emotional infrastructure. It tells someone, you belong here, or go figure it out. Younger employees often ask for clarity. Older ones may expect people to understand things gradually. But across generations, one thing holds true. First impressions shape engagement. Our clients do this. Map the first 30 days, tools, people, goals, send a plan before day one and not on day one. Eases anxiety for some, gives orientation to others. Make the new person start with a small, meaningful project, making them succeed early. Everyone at every age loves accomplishment. Onboarding is your first promise, but it's also the first test of an organization.
What about feedback? Is silence still golden, as they say? Yes, to some, and then it means trust. To others, like maybe younger staff, it reads as absence, as not looking. We hear from Gen Z that they expect feedback that is clear, real-time, specific. But the truth is we all need feedback. And we know that we lose emotional connection to an event after 2 weeks. That's why feedback that's delayed, it doesn't help people grow. So give it while the moment is still fresh. Make it specific so that people can act on it. Make it mutual and make it multi-directional. Clarity is kindness. So be clear, be kind, but not be vague. And we find that in high-power rooms, sometimes feedback disappears because it's too dangerous, too risky to actually say something. And we have observed effective leaders normalize feedback by saying something like, that's one viewpoint. Let's hear some dissent. Feedback isn't performance control, it's how you build relationships, it's how you build connection.
Decision-making usually involves the people affected by the outcome. But if you look at it, very often it's young employees who are trusted to run the social media channels, but they're not invited to the meetings where the brand is crafted. Same goes for older colleagues who are maybe not in leadership positions, but have a lot of client trust and a lot of context about things, but then get sidelined when things need to go quick. If decisions are made by the same people in the same rooms with the same experience base, something gets lost.
Offboarding. Exits are now part of a normal career flow, right? Tech and shifting markets, they shift roles, they shift entire careers more quickly. So younger employees might job hop and then come back later because they realize that was a great employer right there. I just didn't know it before. And older ones may leave after decades and they carry wisdom that should be honored. Too often, though, offboarding feels like failure. The best organizations we've seen treat it as a rite of passage, with dignity, with reflection, with structure. So you could help a person who's leaving shape their story, support them in next steps, and take that departure of a person as an invitation to draw lessons for yourself. Even if things ended badly, own your 3%. We know from grief research that relationships don't end, they evolve. And so if you connect that to work, think the connection can continue even if the role ends. Everyone walking out of your organization becomes an ambassador for you. So offboarding can safeguard your reputational capital.
Action, that's where everyone has agency. Now, for a moment, just think of someone from another generation who recently irritated you. What exactly did they do? What bothered you? How did you feel? You got someone? I think most of us probably do. And try to bring up that feeling and acknowledge for a moment. A feeling manifests in the body. We talked about emotional intelligence. Emotions are physiological experiences. And we know from research they carry information, and noticing them in the body is a good first step because it creates space from I'm angry to, okay, I experienced some anger in my body. By the way, anger is probably in the upper body. That's consistent across cultures. Now, if you picture that person and you recall the feeling, the first thing that usually helps is to pause. Basic, but notice the breath. Our body calms our brain. Very basic, but we know it and it works. Now, ask yourself, why did it bother me? And reflect, was it about something that they did in that moment, or perhaps is it something older in me that pops up? Try shifting perspective based on everything we heard before. What might be going on for them? Empathy, perspective taking. And focus on 3 similarities you share with that person without glossing over life differences. Just focus on similarities. Also a finding from neuroscience that helps us connect with people. And then, without ever having to do it, just imagine the kindest possible response. If you choose to respond, maybe say, what I hear you say is, buys yourself time, makes the other one feel heard, and ensures that you understood each other. Tell me more signals curiosity and usually opens communication channels instead of shutting them down. What I struggle with might be a way of being direct and vulnerable at the same time. Tiny moves, big effects. The point is, often we react to echoes from our past and not to what's happening in a present moment with a colleague. We run on autopilot. Our brains sort who's on my team and who's not. And because of our increasingly different realities, we more and more other people of different generations. And on the level of the brain, empathy for outgroups doesn't come automatically. It requires choice. It takes conscious effort to de-other them and to see the human needs behind people's behaviors, including when they're in a very different life stage. And lastly, we know about the danger of a single story, so why not acknowledge that the stories we tell ourselves are often shitty first drafts?
So we've learned that stories can make or break the futures we're trying to create. We know that most organizations' systems are actually not designed with generational literacy in mind. And action is where we all have agency to merge these experience spaces that are not one and turn generational out groups into our in groups. The big shifts are already here. Why should any generation carry that alone? If we want to squash the beef, we'll have to build the future of work together.
Because nothing about us without us. Thank you.
Thank you.